Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:07 in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in here to O'Connor and Company. It's a busy morning here, wrapping up a busy week in news and getting you ready for another busy week in the news as all eyes are on the Senate with the reconciliation package. President Trump's deadline, July 4th. That would be this Friday. And they cleared a hurdle, certainly, but there's many more to come. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenova to wrap up those Supreme Court decisions on Friday. Then 7:35, Ishmael Royer. He's with the Islamic and Religious Freedom Institute. Talk about that Supreme Court decision for Montgomery County parents. He's one of those parents, by the way, who worked on the case. 8:05, Alex Sawyer, Washington Times. And then at 8:35, Stuart Whitson. He's your brand new Republican nominee in the 11th District for that special election coming up in September. It's a real sprint to the finish line for that one. Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie, are you recovered from your weekend?
I am. Great weekend.
Good. Same here. Great weekend. Good. I mean, except for all the canceled flights all up and down the East Coast.
And except for the heat
and
in
the
D.C.
Heat and luggage being lost.
Oh, no, really?
Actually, it was a bit of a nightmare weekend. But everything's fine. It's good. We're good. We made it through. And we are.
Oh, dear.
And we're reflecting on the ongoing story out of the Middle East, specifically the ceasefire that remains intact between Israel and Iran. Once again, the deafening silence from other Middle Eastern nations who seem to be just fine with Iran being neutralized, as it appears they are now. And other developments here with regard to whether there is going to be an ongoing nuclear program or whether there will be some sort of peace deal. Taylor Hathorn is the visiting fellow for the Center for American Safety and Security over there at Independent Women's Forum. She works on this stuff. Sorry, it is. I had to take a breath in the middle of that title, Taylor. Good to talk to you again. How are you, ma'am?
Yeah, good to talk to you. Excited to talk all things Middle East, my friends.
So help me out here. It appears as though the damage was incredibly extensive, and we've got multiple intelligence reports, not just from U.S. intelligence, but also from really the best intelligence agency on the planet, Israel's. And they all confirm that. And yet the UN watchdog has said, yeah, maybe not. It looks like they're going to be able to go on and start enriching uranium sooner rather than later. What is the reality on the ground? Will we ever really know exactly the extent of this damage?
I think the media narratives on this are getting people a little bit hung up, and certainly talking heads like Joy Reid on CNN saying that we destroyed their ability to create renewable energy certainly doesn't help the situation with confusion.
It's true. It is so sad. As it's literally free for them.
In the dark.
They have all the oil they want. Yeah.
Poor Scott's face was like, I don't even know what to do with that. But the initial mission was to never eliminate all of Iran's nuclear materials. It was to devastate their ability to enrich uranium at a rate that posed a threat to the United States and our allies, and that mission has been accomplished. I mean, the reality is that Iran will probably never publicly disclose just how bad they were hit. Most of this regime's shtick is just to talk a big game, to appear to be the head honcho of the Middle East. But regardless of the devastation, Iran will continue to seek to build a nuclear weapon. There is no doubt in my mind about that. Extremist ideologies don't just stop at a setback, but even a major one. But the president has made very, very, very clear the consequences to them in doing so.
Yeah.
So, Taylor, explain to us, there's a ceasefire. There seems to be, some early on, right after the bombings, there seemed to be some recognition on Iran's part that, okay, fine, we're done, we want a ceasefire, and now we're hearing that they've issued a fatwa against Trump. Explain to me, I'm not surprised that it's a little bit schizophrenic over there, but What is the state of the ceasefire? And, there's talk of a potential meeting with Iran. What's going on?
The fatwa is just a blatant attempt to cloak authoritarianism as martyrdom in the name of Islam. And honestly, it's absurd. If you look at the makeup of Iran and you look at their government structure, you're always going to have these ayatollahs who say these insane things, but I mean, there is undisputed and undeniable evidence that Iran was already responsible for several attempts at the president's life. So issuing this fatwa to rile up these religious zealots, I mean, this is nothing new. This is just another page out of their playbook. And I mean, not something that we should not take seriously, but it's not like they're saying anything new. This is not something that's like just unheard of.
Okay. So what is the next step here then? I mean, because we ended the week last week with certain people saying that the Trump administration now wants to sit down with Iran now that they don't have really any sort of functioning nuclear program that's a direct threat. That they're willing to sit and talk and discuss potentially working out some deal. Is that an operational plan, or should there be continuing undermining of this regime so that at some point eventually the people of Iran can gain their freedom back?
I mean, Rubio has come out and said that they have bent over backwards to create a deal. Our allies in the Middle East have served as mediaries where we're trying to work with them. But honestly, any nation that shouts death to America and as their official slogan, I think you kind of got to take that off the table a little bit. They've made clear that they are a hostile regime and that they prefer relationships with other adversaries like China and Russia, and that they do not want to work with us. And there is zero need to conduct peace talks with a regime like that. And I don't think that we need them on our side to keep them at bay, to be perfectly honest with you.
I agree with you.
Taylor, I have a question about the sort of culture in Iran. We hear two things. You hear the people of Iran, hate this regime and want it. They want regime change. And yet this weekend we saw this really bizarre and unsettling video of women in Iran holding up their babies, offering them up to be martyrs. What is the culture in Iran? What is the truth? I mean, are the people willing to really push for regime change? Or, I mean, these people have lived this way. This is a generation of people who've lived under this regime. What's the truth?
I think it's a mistake to think that we can go into countries in the Middle East and change an entire culture. But I also think it's a mistake to assume that everyone in those nations thinks that way. I mean, the Iranian regime has assassinated more of their own citizens in the past week than were killed in the entire 12-day war. And that should tell you a lot about what's happening over there. They do not care at all what their people think. And so even if you have 70% of the country who's like, hey, we've had enough of this, we want to be one of these allies like the GCC nations who are wanting to work with the West, who are wanting to focus on industry, who are wanting to partner with the United States. Even if you have 70% of the nation doing that, you still got a huge portion of them who are either too afraid to step up, two, can't access, other people with similar like-minded thoughts and processes because the Iranian regimes have cut off access to the internet, have disbanded Starlink. I mean, you've got so many polarizing thoughts going on over there that they just don't know what to do with it, even the ones who are on our side.
Hey, Taylor, real fast, if I could draw on your expertise, how do I get me one of them Iranian fatwas?
Yeah, I think you're well on your way with your Twitter content.
Thank you. I was hoping so. The best I can do is get other radio hosts to issue fatwas on me, but I've never been able to get the Iranian government. I want an Ayatollah to, I'll get there at some point. You can advise me offline.
Start tagging them. You'll get there.
Thank you, Taylor. Great talking with you. Appreciate it.
You too.
It's 6:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Let's get a quick rundown here of these Supreme Court decisions. We'll get into detail with Joe DeGeneva at 7:05, but it really was a landmark day on Friday. We sort of saw it coming. There were plenty of big decisions still sort of hanging in the balance. One involving these nationwide injunctions that just one piddly little federal court circuit judge, or district judge, could issue to sort of stop the executive branch in its tracks. Idiots said, well, that's the separation of powers in the Constitution. No, idiot. I'm sorry. You are just an idiot. You're like repeating something that some moron on MSNBC said. Those federal courts are not a function of the judicial branch in the Constitution. They're actually created and funded and charged by the Congress. That's an Article 2 court, not an Article 3 court, or excuse me, an Article 1 court. Setting that aside for a moment, though, President Trump, along with his Attorney General Pam Bondi, celebrated these decisions and basically laid out the course forward now that they can actually get stuff done. Cut 5 is President Trump.
This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law.
Amen.
In striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch, the Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important.
Now, by the way, any constitutional conservative who still likes to call themselves the real conservatives that haven't been infected by Donald Trump, the people who celebrate drag queens over at the Bulwark.
That's right.
If they really do embrace constitutional principles, they should be loving this. The only reason they hate it is because, well, this means Trump can do what he was elected to do, and they just don't like Trump is the problem. Right. That's the problem. And for those of you who are like, well, this is outrageous, this has gone so far, all right, don't blame Trump. Blame these judges who pushed the issue beyond, and all the activist groups who spent hundreds of millions of dollars to instigate this lawfare to use the courts as extra constitutional weapons. And by the way, blame Biden and Obama during their presidencies for their extensive use of executive orders that put us back into this place. I'd love to make Congress great again, trust me. And I'd love to get back into a time where we're legislating and actually doing things the right way. But short of that, this is what the presidency has become. And that's what we're dealing with now. And every president should be treated equally.
Well, this is a classic case of the inability to look at what if there were a Democrat in the White House and you had a number of conservative judges around the country trying to stop his presidential actions. It was very funny. The Babylon Bee in reaction to this was like, basically court rules that president is allowed to be president and do presidential things
exactly.
Because he's president, because he was elected president by the people to be president and to act like a president. It was very funny. But again, you even have video of Kagan, Justice Kagan, months ago at a forum, probably one of these sort of, Politico forums, where she talked about how one little judge off in some little town is not going to stop the president from doing something because of political reasons. And yet she went with the minority on this case. So it's kind of depressing to see her so quickly.
It was 2022 when she said that, when Biden was president, and you had some courts stopping his open borders policies.
Yep.
And that's what she was saying. So you're right. I mean, there's no consistency there whatsoever. 6-3 ruling on that. Also had a 6-3 ruling on parents being allowed to assert their parental role with their children over and above a local public school system. That, of course, came out of Montgomery County, Maryland, which are keeping parents from being able to opt their children out of objectionable sexual content. Again, 6-3 on that one. The fact that we even had to take that to the Supreme Court is disgusting. Age verification for online porn was upheld in the state of Texas. It is not an intrusion of your privacy to make sure that children aren't seeing hardcore pornography. Again, a 6-3 ruling. And finally, the opinion written by Justice Amy Coney Barrett in the federal injunction case was so scathing and so insulting and so absolutely devastating for Ketanji Brown Jackson, who wrote the dissent. The language in here is something that I have never seen before. And the 5 colleagues of Amy Coney Barrett, including the Chief Justice, said, yeah, I'll put my name on that. I agree. Basically calling Ketanji Brown Jackson stupid and like without any sort of basic understanding of the law. I'll read really quickly. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument. She should have put argument in scare quotes, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this: Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary.
Wow.
Absolutely eviscerated.
Are we done? Are we done being mean
like
to Justice Barrett? Are we done?
Until the next decision. But there is a whole lot of redemption here. By the way, the federal injunction case, it pivoted and hinged on birthright citizenship. Because that injunction's been smacked down, birthright citizenship will be revoked now until there is another decision made. Now, the Supreme Court may take that up and actually argue on the merits of this.
Yeah.
We shall see, and we'll talk to Joe DeGenova about that coming up at 7:05. Right now, it's 6:23.
Coming up, we'll give you the latest on the big, beautiful bill and the differences between the Senate and the House versions. Keep it here. It's 6:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37. Yes, it is. It's O'Connor and Company here this very busy Monday morning. Thanks for starting your day with us. We're going to get you off the right way, and you're going to love talking to Joe DeGenova at 7:05 on all the Supreme Court rulings. 7:35, Ismail Royer. He's with the Religious Freedom Institute, and he was part of that argument against Supreme Court over parents' rights. 8:05, Alex Sawyer, Washington Times. 8:35, Stuart Whitson is your Republican nominee for Congress in the 11th District in that special election. He's going to tell us how he's going to win that baby. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Morning, Julie.
Good morning.
You worked in the Senate for a while there.
I did.
Can you, like, if you had to say, this was the biggest thing we ever voted on, biggest legislation. Homeland Security.
Yeah.
That was a monster because you were taking, like, various departments of different.
It wasn't just that. It wasn't just that. We were shifting oversight control. And boy, did those members get angry on the House and Senate side when we started to say, oh, well, you're going to lose, Secret Service. We're going to shift it over to the Department of Homeland Security. And boy, that was a real education in power struggles.
Power and control. Yeah, the reconciliation bill that is making its way through Congress right now is not quite as monumental as the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. But let's face it, this is quite possibly the most important piece of legislation that President Trump will engineer in his second term. It's the way to bring to fruition so many of his campaign promises, including sort of codifying the border security that he's already been able to enact with more funding, more ability for border security and Department of Homeland Security to be able to function and do their job and continue to track down bad guys. We just had some more reports over the weekend of some horrific child traffickers who have been arrested by ICE. That stuff has to happen because it needs to be funded. The budgets for DHS were sort of reutilized in horrific ways and stupid ways during Biden, as you know. Of course, the tax cuts, the no tax on tips, the no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. These are huge, huge tax cuts. They've all been factored into this reconciliation bill. And after the parliamentarian of the Senate sort of stripped away a lot of the important aspects of the Medicare reformation that basically said, no, if you're an able-bodied person who can work, you should get off the sofa and work. That's how the law was right up until COVID. They made modifications to it just for COVID. Going back to it now that COVID is over shouldn't be controversial, but of course they've determined that they can't do that during reconciliation, or at least this parliamentarian did. That all said, the big, beautiful bill late Saturday night did, in fact, take a major step forward with a 51-49 vote after hours well into the night trying to, wrangle and twist arms. Lisa Murkowski at the last minute, of all people, ended up voting for this thing. So J.D. Vance was not needed to break the tie, even though he had gone down there. Did you see the scene of him going through security and walking into the Senate? Like, you know, oh, he's such a cowboy.
Like he owned the place.
Yeah, you need my vote? All right, I'm here if you need it. But they didn't need it, actually. Tom Tillis threw his president under the bus, and every Republican who voted for him in North Carolina under the bus. He's done. In fact, he announced that he's done. Trump called this a great victory as it cleared the Senate. And now we get to the next steps with this thing. But it looks as though he's going to get this. It just isn't going to have the level of cuts that we were all hoping with regard to ensuring that the Medicare was secure for the future. If you do care about Medicare, then you should want to insist that able-bodied young men are able to get off the sofa and go work. You don't get free stuff from this government if you are an able-bodied person who can work. That's the bottom line. That's an ethic that goes all the way back to our founding.
It is just astonishing how misleading the Democrats are on this. They say, you know, how many thousands of people will be kicked off, millions of people will be kicked off Medicare, how many people will suffer because of this. And they leave out that, one, they're either illegal in this country and have no business getting our welfare system, access to our welfare system, or two, they are, as you say, I can't stress this enough. It's able-bodied. It's not just able-bodied. It's within a certain age range. I think it's like 21 to 45 or something like that. And no dependents. These are literally people sitting at home who have no disabilities and no dependents and are unwilling. And if you don't think generational welfare is a problem in this country, if you don't think people get on these programs and then don't get off, and then they get their kids on these programs and they get their other relatives on these programs, you're delusional. There is a real problem with the welfare system in this country. And this is a very, very, very small step. And yet the Democrats are panicking people. And again, that's why you get these sort of people that become radicalized. They really do think that they're going to lose access, that disabled people and new moms and all these, they always say it's like the most vulnerable people who are going to be thrown off the rolls. It's not true.
And the truth is it's the opposite of that.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. Well, starting at 9 a.m. today, they begin a vote-a-rama, they call it. There's going to be up to 20 hours of debate and a bunch of amendments that are being put in there. Democrats are offered 10 hours of debate. Republicans can match that, but they probably won't, so it'll only be 10 hours ultimately. And then you've got all these votes on amendments, and then eventually it appears as though by the time it passes the Senate now, it will be in the hands of the House Wednesday. That's the earliest chance. And then the pressure will be on. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats, the last option they've got here, Trump wanted this by July 4th. And it appears as though they've lost. The Democrats have lost. This is going to happen. The only thing they can do now is delay it and say, ha, he didn't get it by the 4th of July.
I know, it's so ridiculous.
And that's all they got. And
that's all they got. And
although, let's be clear, there are going to be some House members who are going to try to, get some things at the last minute here or potentially force a conference process. Let me just say that the election of this communist mayor in New York, it emphasizes why we should do away with these SALT deductions. There's I shouldn't say liberal Republicans, Republicans in liberal districts in states like California and New York who have been insisting on bringing back the state and local income tax deductions, which means you can deduct and listen, as a Marylander, I would love to have that back. But guess what? All that does is empower your state and your local municipality to continue to raise taxes. So, this communist wants to raise taxes another 2% on wealthy people in New York City. And then if the SALT things go through, that means that they'll be able to deduct that on their income taxes. So the rest of America are subsidizing those tax increases by the communist in New York. That's wrong. It shouldn't be.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
And I think that frankly, it undermines that case even more. Anyway, we'll see how this goes, and it's going to be all eyes on Capitol Hill for the next couple of days. 6:44.
WMAL, making sense of the economy because it's your money and your retirement. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Let's just take a moment, though, to dwell on that one note over the weekend on the vote in the Senate. Senator Tom Tillis, who's, let's face it, been a thorn on the side of President Trump this entire first several months of his second term. He has announced that not only is he a no vote on the big, beautiful bill, but within 6 hours of announcing that, he also announced that he will not seek re-election in North Carolina this year. That's after President Trump put out a True Social post saying, I'm done. We're going to primary this SOB.
I can't help but just say what for 1 second. When I was little, I'm a little sister. I used to hit my sister and then run for my life, right? Right? Well, you're a dad. You get this dynamic, right? Yes. You hit, and you get her from behind, right? And then you run for your life and you hide. That's what Tillis did.
That's what Tom Tillis
He must be a little brother.
But it seems like every year there's a different senator who is like this. Remember Jeff Flake? Whatever happened to him? That was a huge career move, man. I'm going to defy Trump. Look at me. And he had
his legacy is getting screamed at women as he's entering an elevator.
He had 6 months of infamy, and he was feted on CNN, and they loved him in MSNBC, and now he's completely disappeared.
No, he's at the Bulwark.
He said, well, there you go. That's where Tom Tillis is heading. So now we're going to have an open seat in 2026. A lot of money is going to be poured into that seat. They think, oh, good, it's an open seat. It is North Carolina. North Carolina has been consistently voting Republican in presidential races now since 2012. However, they keep voting for Democrat governors. So what's the deal with that? Laura Trump, who is originally from North Carolina, she's the wife of Eric Trump, she's expressed interest in maybe running for that race. And I'm not a big fan of dynasties, but I like her. She's good.
Oh, she is great. Yeah.
Let's not forget the chairman of the Republican.
She's put the work in. My goodness. It's not like she's just like she's off the, ASPCA charity run and then she's, and then she's running. She's
not just another pretty face. And let's not forget the chairman of the RNC, Michael Whatley, is in fact from North Carolina. He knows that state. He has a keen interest in keeping that seat. Listen, I welcome the Democrats pumping $50 million into it, but I don't think they're going to keep that seat. It is 6:52.